Welcome to the Emily the Mystic Show. You're about to walk through a portal that leads to all things mystical, magical, spiritual, and supernatural. I'm your host, Emily. I'm a spiritual mentor, an Akashic Records practitioner and teacher, an intuition development coach, and a galactic channeler. If you're an old soul on a self-discovery and healing journey, you are in the right place. We'll be diving in deep to some of my favorite mystical topics, including manifestation, past lives, the spirit world, energy, and so much more. Get ready to embrace your inner mystic and live your most authentic life possible. The portal is now open. Hello, my dear listener, and welcome to the Emily the Mystic Show podcast. Today's podcast guest is the amazing Lauren on Earth. If you are not familiar with Lauren, she is a galactic shadow worker and dives into more of the challenging side of the shadow work space. I share this message with you ahead of listening to this podcast episode to say that some of the information in this episode may be new for you and perhaps may be challenging to hear. This information is work that I do behind closed doors here in the Emily the Mystic world, where we uncover malevolent galactic interferences and energies that could be blocking you and stopping you from moving forward in your life. If you have not listened to my entity episode, I highly recommend that you listen to that episode first before listening to this one for some context into the realm of shadow work and what it means to have an entity attachment. Where do they come from? How do we heal from them? That will provide you some important information before diving into the galactic realm of this work. A reminder that this information is not to scare you, but to provide awareness about what exists out there so that as healers, we do not have any blind spots and are covering all possibilities and potentials when it could come to your human journey and the healing that you are here to experience. So if this episode for you, if you maybe get freaked out by the alien stuff in the galactic realm, then you may want to hit pause on this episode and come back at a later time when you're ready to listen. But if you're like, this is for me, I am so ready to receive this, I need this information now, then I encourage you to keep listening, enjoy the show, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts. My dear listener, I cannot wait for this conversation today with Lauren on Earth. If you do not know Lauren on Earth already, you are about to, because we are going to dive into a really interesting conversation about the galactic realm. So for all my starseeds out there, there are going to be some messages in here for you today. I'm just going to say that, and we'll see what we get into. So Lauren is a compassionate Akashic Record reader, a masterful quantum healer, an interpreter of galactic astrology, and a guide to the depths of the underworld where shadows transform into light, as well as a devoted mentor in psychic development and a revered retreat leader who orchestrates soul-nourishing experiences in sacred vortexes around the globe. Wonderful. Lauren, thank you. Welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Fantastic. And so we can get to know you a little bit better. Can you share with us your astrology, sun, moon, and rising, and your human design type?
Yes. So human design, I'm a manifesting generator 6-2, and sun, moon, and rising, Gemini sun, Cancer moon, Sag rising.
Ooh, yay. I'm a manifesting generator myself. So we love
that.
The multi-passionate energy over here at Emily the Mystic, that's for sure.
Yes.
And I know that a lot of your work focuses around the shadow realm as well as the galactic realm. So can you share with us, just in your own words, what your work means to you and what you're passionate about when it comes to serving the world, your clients, all of that?
Yeah. So it started with getting sick, an autoimmune or multiple autoimmune diseases, and hearing the voice of spirit to guide me to healing. So I started learning the Akashic Records to help myself because my whole life I was just in darkness. And, for a while you think it's you because you don't understand and don't know any better. And I remember my very first ayahuasca ceremony, my one question was, why am I the way I am? And so, sorry, my dog is
They love the energy of these things.
just needs to come up here. So yeah, my question was, why am I the way I am? Why do I have so much anger? Why is there, honestly, to be truthful, so much hate in my heart? And in that ceremony, I was brought to my mom in the hospital room and like seeing my birth. And I'm like, oh, I came into this life this way. So I did a lot of healing I really kind of started to wake up to, beyond what I was taught in 2012. From 2012 to 2018, I would say was a lot of work of this lifetime. And now it's 2018 and I'm like, why am I still so unhappy, so angry? And that's when I started to understand that past lives play a really big role in everything, who we are. So I learned to read the Akashic Records simply for honestly self-serving purposes. I needed to understand myself and get out of this mess. I never, ever thought I would be doing this work. I was studying Ayurveda, I was studying herbalism. So still in the realm of health and wellness and spirituality, and thought, I'll be a psychic herbalist and use my intuitive abilities and do that. And Spirit was like, nope, you are giving readings. And yeah, then that spun me into the shadow work. And I remember I was in this group Akashic reading in LA at my meditation studio. And I was there because I thought I was having an autoimmune flare up. And that was my question of, I don't understand how this happened. I've been doing everything right. I haven't strayed, from my normal day to day of knowing how to manage my symptoms. And she was like, oh, this isn't a flare up. There's an entity attached to you and you're having a psychic attack. And she was like, well, this is what your work, light and dark, the battle of light and dark. And I cried. I was not okay with that. It was scary. And she was like, yeah, just like you brush your teeth every day, you're going to have to learn to clear these entities off you every day. And I was already, just kind of wanting to be normal. Now that's just completely gone. But, when you live your whole life feeling kind of outcasted, being told you got to clear demons, while you brush your teeth is not what you want to hear. So about a year and a half later, I was really getting deeper into this work and starting to give readings and, developing the website and being of service. And I was noticing these reptilian beings, 3 of them, in my room, nonstop watching me, following me everywhere I went. And that's when I started to realize, like, okay, she was right. And I had to figure out like who they were and what they were doing here and how to get them out. And that's really where all of this started. So the work that I do is very multidimensional, in sessions where I'm not so much focused on the trauma in this lifetime. Of course, it's a part of it, but we're really trying to get to the root and understand just how long these patterns have been going on and where they're coming from, and, moving between different dimensions with these different aspects of our consciousness that are living in these different dimensions and or sometimes stuck in these different dimensions. And yeah, it just kind of took off from there. And then I think, as you know, I went through a crazy experience a year and a half ago that really prepared me even more for this work. But I was under the meditation studio where I got that reading. It was her studio. We were friends for 5 years. She was about like 12, 13 years older than me. I was 24 when I met her. And I always thought, it's not that I thought I was special for her, kind of taking a liking to me as a, mid 30s woman interested in honestly a very broken and broke 24-year-old girl. But we stayed friends. She wound up moving up to Mount Shasta. I would go visit her, live with her. And it kind of all came out that she just wasn't who she said she was. And I went on her retreat. And I realized very quickly, I'm like, there are dark portals. There is black magic everywhere. I think they're trying to hurt me. And it was honestly a real life paranormal movie that I lived for 5 days, kind of realizing that all of this pain traced back to them and this group and this cult from ancient Egypt that is still, for the most part, alive and well today. So that was a big training ground for me of, being able now to go anywhere, to be anywhere, whether on earth, in the underworld, and no one can touch me, nothing can hurt me, which is, as you know, such a big thing because we put ourselves at risk to be doing this work. And now, having gone through that, I'm immune to anything trying to harm me or the client, which is really, really important. So I, would do it again if I needed to. It just was not fun in the moment. But I learned a lot. And so, yeah, there's this newfound confidence in navigating the shadow because it's a place that we've neglected to look with our own traumas. But at the same time, there are beings, there are entities, there's a lot going on down there that isn't always in. They don't always care about you. Most of them don't really care about you, your sovereignty, respect that. And so when you are diving into the shadow work, it's very likely, you're going to come across these beings and these attachments that have, found a way within at some point in time. So learning how to navigate that yourself, because I teach it as well, because it's I could keep helping you, but it's a journey, and it's a multi-year journey. So a big part of my work as well is how to find comfort in doing this yourself and how to be safe while navigating the underworld. So that was a very loaded answer to your question. Sorry.
I love it. No, this is so perfect. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I think it's so important. And that's one of the things I really admire about you and your work is that you're so real and authentic with your journey and what you've been through. And that the spiritual space is not all love and light. It's just not. And we would love to believe that it is because we are heart-centered people and we do want this work to be fun and we do want to, and we do want to bring joy to people. But at the same time, we know that in order to enjoy that love, receive that joy, we have to go into the shadow. We have to go deeper into it. We have to see what's there. And I so admire you. And I want to say too, I admire myself for having the courage to look some of this stuff in the eyes because it's not comfortable and it's not fun and it's not easy. But boy, does it when you open that can of worms and when you have the courage and the bravery to get into it, does it create so much confidence, power, and sovereignty within you to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and know that, hey, I faced the shadows of the spiritual world and hey, I'm still here. I'm still standing and I feel pretty good for it. So thank you so much. I just want to say for being one of those people who does this form of work. And yeah, it's a pretty crazy journey. I have to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always say too, it's the shadow or the unprocessed pain and emotion, right? It's we feel it, whether we want to consciously acknowledge it or not. So it's either you go through life having that suppressed feeling of always something, nudging you, or it's the emotion that's right, reminding you that it's still here, or you take some time, maybe it's months, maybe it's years to really address it and then it's gone. So it's either you live your whole life kind of still putting a lot of energy to push it down and you're always going to feel that pain in some way, shape or form manifest, or you deal with it and it's gone and then you can really experience more joy and, it's over. And I think that's a thing with a lot of clients too, where it's hard to tell them like this is a multi-year process because it can feel really daunting. But when you really start to get control over it, and control as in you just let it be what it is, which isn't really the definition of control. And then you start to look back and you're like, wow, this is actually a really beautiful process. And I should be looking at it that way as well, instead of just, when is this over? When is this over? So yeah, that's something I learned probably closer to the end of my journey. It's hard in the moment.
Yeah. And I would say too, it's so many layers, because I would love, and I do give my clients meditations to try to learn how to shift this energy for yourself, because we have to start somewhere. And of course, you can come see me, and Lauren, you can talk about your work as well, to receive an entity clearing, to at least get in there, start working on these layers. But again, it's layers. So I would love to promise you that in one session, we can get rid of everything. But you and I both know that there's so many layers to it. And each layer that we dive into, you realize, oh, I wouldn't have been ready for this layer, 2 months ago. We have to go into it slowly. We have to go into it in the cadence that the soul is ready for it. But as you keep purging, as you keep working through it, no matter how much time it takes, it is rewarding in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's not, the timing is not up to our human. So letting that go is going to propel you forward even more, but it's not easy.
Yes. So I want to catch people up, because for my listener, you may be on different timelines when it comes to your own shadow work journey. So I want to sort of talk about, Lauren, in your opinion, what attracts or what causes an attachment in the first place? Do you see it as trauma? Like what are your beliefs or opinions on that?
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways that can happen. I feel that it's nothing new to this lifetime. So if you've never, dealt with an entity attachment, or it's like, yeah, we're all coming into this life with trauma and karma. And a lot of the times that the entity does attach, it's connected to a deeper wound, even sometimes a limiting belief or a trauma. But sometimes these entities, right, these dark forces that have kind of taken over, I mean, not kind of, but like have taken over this planet, they create the trauma that then allows them to attach. So that happens as well, but we don't, want to blame them and just, put the blame on them for that. But I have noticed a lot where they create this reality, kind of force us into this reality. It goes against our natural flow of evolution, natural flow of self, and that causes trauma and that causes separation. And then they go in and kind of play off of that. So if an entity attaches to you, it's something within that was a match to it. And if you weren't a match to it, it wouldn't be able to attach. But again, it's like, it's not our fault, your fault, anyone's fault. It's just the nature of the game. And, I always look at it and it's like, we want to be able to feel frustrated and also grossed out at times, right? Of like really the evil that is happening on this planet. Like it's okay to feel those emotions toward it. I think a really unfortunate new age belief is you feel those emotions and it's going to attract negativity, which is just not true at all. It's if you choose to stay in those cycles of negativity and not do anything about it, then that's, something we want to look at. But by being in fear or having a moment of fear doesn't mean an entity is going to come attached to you. There's so much fear in our systems, it's like I'm still clearing fear. I'm still moving through fear. And it might look like that's not the case at all. some podcast episodes that I do that come out, I'm like, ooh, I don't know. And I have to, move through fear. And so I had one client who, was part of that community. I'm no longer connected with her, but she was like, I'm better than that. I'm not caving into the fear. And I'm like, no, the fear is already there and you're choosing to avoid it. And, she wound up becoming infiltrated by this group and is now giving healings, and those healings are infiltrated. So, it becomes this whole web and this whole mess where healers don't realize that they're actually serving the dark agenda and distorting the grids and disrupting this process because they don't realize or don't want to see the shadow and the hidden. So I lost my train of thought. Like, what was the question?
No, this is perfect. I want to dive a little bit more into the malevolent forces, because this is something that, frankly, I've had some resistance to sharing a lot of information about publicly. It's something I teach behind closed doors. It's something that I haven't fully tapped into in terms of my YouTube channel and what's out there. So, Lauren, to catch you up, I have a whole series on my YouTube channel with many different galactic beings that I've channeled, all benevolent. And there's also a side of the malevolent work that we do when releasing malevolent spirit attachments and the galactic technologies and things that I think we need to talk a little bit more about today. So, Lauren, can you share with us who are the different forces that we need to be aware of? And maybe just talk a little bit about the systems of control that they create here on this planet.
Yeah, I see two different groups that all serve the same God, which to me is, I would call the Antichrist, right? Like the opposite of God, which exists in, the lower realms, and then God in the higher, and we're somewhere here. So there are underworld groups that are here as well, like the fallen angelics, the Nephilim, the giants, the vampires, and this also like dark priesthood underworld energy, which was my friend. And then you have the higher dimensional service to self groups that are a little bit farther away from the core of the Antichrist, and a little bit closer to God, right? But they're still in service to themselves. So what they're doing as a whole is negatively impacting the universe because they're not thinking about everyone else. They're only thinking about themselves. So I had this experience in ayahuasca a couple of years ago because I was really struggling, and again, it's another new age belief of you need to love everyone and the reptilians are not that bad and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I get it. It's like from one perspective, yes, love all, but we are also in the third dimension. It's a much lower dimension, and there are a lot of emotions here. And we're not here to, it's like we're working toward being able to love all, but how can you do that when you're witnessing this group be violent and destructive? It's bypassing to me. So the God, I was in front of him. It wasn't even the medicine. I was like in front of God's throne, and I was like, help me. How am I supposed to love these beings where I'm witnessing, my clients have miscarriages because the Anunnaki are messing with their womb? Like, how am I supposed to be okay with that, And so God was just like, well, and I might get emotional. I don't know why, because I've told this story so many times, but here we are, Cancer moon. God was like, well, I love them because they are me. So it was that confirmation, right, of we are all of the same source. But this is, I don't know why this is happening. This is what happens when you turn your back on yourself. And this is what manifests when you disconnect from yourself and from God. And that's what they are a representation of. And God was like, because I was talking about how my whole life I was in darkness, and it's like, you turn your back on yourself Um, and, I still love you and still, still welcome you. And so that's, that made a lot of sense to me. But that's God. And I'm Lauren and I'm a human, and they have, really hurt me and corrupted me and created a lot of pain over the course of a very long period of time. And I'm just coming out of that, where they can no longer hurt me after, who knows how long, maybe millions of years. So I'm not there yet, and most of us are not there yet because we're just waking up to the corruption. And you can't just go from like seeing the corruption to being okay with it and not going through a process of healing. So there are the underworld groups that I see, and then the above world groups, or like the galactic groups, which are the reptilians, the Anunnaki, who are human reptilian hybrids. There are the archons, who are, I believe, like there's a ranking, there's a hierarchy where in God's children, we're all equal, but with the service to self groups, they're all kind of fighting for the same thing, which is control of the planet, and they're all helping each other, but there's no loyalty. And that's one of their greatest downfalls, because there are, all these different technologies and forms of black magic and, means of control and the mind control are coming from reptilian, from Anunnaki, from gray, from archon. And it's kind of hitting us all at once. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, they're never going to give it up for another group to take the lead. So I noticed that, right after the retreat, and I'm like, oh, this is a weak spot for them that I can, use to get out of this. And those are, I would say, the main four. I mean, there are other hybrids, there are other worlds that are, I see that in galactic astrology. I see a lot of clients that have, some of them that have lived in these worlds or visited these worlds, but I don't feel them as strong as I feel those main groups here.
Yeah, that all makes so much sense. And thank you for sharing that message too. I mean, I think your emotion was because we needed to hear that so deeply. And I felt the resonance of that. I know for myself, with some of the work that I've done, I've been taken to see lifetimes where I was enslaved or experimented on, and I get emotional talking about it, these horrible things that can be done to you in other lives that you did not. And here's that complicated topic of consent, right? And free will. Like, did we consent? Was this free will or not? And having to kind of sit with those experiences, knowing that we're here to heal from those experiences, but find throughout the healing that there is still a message and a learning around reclaiming your sovereignty, and also finding that love and connection that still exists within yourself despite what you've been through.
Yeah, exactly. And, I do feel that there was free will, at the very beginning. And this, as I'm healing from this mentor, I had a healing session, and basically what came through was that very first moment that I met her, and I was on another planet, and I walked past her home and I saw it. Like, I saw the distortion, I saw the darkness. It stopped me in my tracks. I kept going. I was going to a market, and the woman showed up at the market and found me at the market and started talking to me. And I knew I saw who she was, but trying to convince me, you're one of us, come with me. And the healer just said, I had this moment of, I could avoid her, ignore her. She's going to come for me anyway, because she knows I saw, or I'm going to willingly go with her and do what I need to do, knowing that, it was like this choice of, you're either going to take me, not necessarily against my will, but it's like that initial meeting had already taken place, or I'm going to be empowered and go with you and know I'm going to come out of it. So I feel like we do make this choice to descend it's the game of soul evolution. It's like you start at the very highest point and you go to the very lowest point and you make your way up the spiral and, strengthen yourself as a soul in the process. So I do see that a lot of us choose that path, but I also feel like they manipulate and, it's like you give an inch and they take 10. So it's like initially there was that choice, but then there is a lot that has happened in between where you maybe didn't really have choice and didn't have so much control and free will because they get in you and the mind control. And now you have these beliefs that go against your true nature and you're easier to manipulate. So, it's kind of like this vicious cycle. So maybe a bit of both.
Yeah, I think that's really important to mention. I just want to make a side note here before I forget to ask you this question. Do you have any guidance and advice for using your discernment with the spiritual community and picking your teachers, your mentors, who you feel guided to work with?
Yes. Because it's such an endemic. It really is. Like, or epidemic. I'm not sure the difference, honestly, but you
It's
get
a
what I'm saying.
pandemic. Let's be real.
Yeah, true, true. And so there are questions on my Instagram, and maybe I'll share the link with you and you can put it in the show notes. I give these slides on questions to ask. And it's really helpful because it's like, what percentage are they in service to self? What percentage are they in service to others? What percentage is their own trauma and their own ego and distortion, affecting this healing? And, sometimes you probably don't even need to get through all of the questions. If you're seeing the healer is like, 50+% in service to self, it's not about you, it's about them. And it's probably not, someone that you want to work with. Of course, there's a percentage where we're all in this for ourselves, for our growth, for, whatever that is. But the majority should be like, you are a vessel for God and a vessel for higher intelligence. And so I could definitely share that. But I think too, it's not getting so caught up in the persona that they're putting up online. I've met a couple of, intuitive people in the spiritual community, like the big names, and they are just not at all who they claim to be online. One of my clients too recently, he's like, I've been following you for a while, watching you for a while. I'm very skeptical with who I work with. And I'm like, yeah, as you should be, like, don't take what they're putting out there at face value and really try to read between the lines. Cause I feel like a lot of people use these buzzwords and then people are like, oh, I've been looking for this and it's all show and it's all illusion. So yeah, I think between those questions and really giving yourself time to like ask to see the truth. One thing that I do when I'm discerning, if a being is light or dark, especially when it comes to, opening these containers and sessions. And sometimes I have beings almost like waiting at the door. Like, who are you? Or if it's a being that, is part of the client's team, but we always want to look for those imposter spirits or those that are claiming to be someone, but they're not. And I just stare them down and I just say, show me your true form. And I stare at them and I just watch if there's a glitch, even a slight glitch, or if sometimes it turns black and then it goes back to light. So it's like they have to reveal and they can't hold that form when you're demanding truth. I had one time where it was Arcturians, like my team, and they're just looking at me and they're like, are we done yet? Like, it's me. So that was really funny, but it works every time. So that's another thing that you can do. And same with, beings or teachers of asking to see, that person's true form, really looking in the eyes tell the story. If the eyes are dark and black, there's something in there. I wouldn't advise that. They've got to go. They need to, take care of that. And I feel like, a lot of people, a lot of healers will, eventually come out of it. It's just, you don't need to be opening yourself up to them and trusting them and being vulnerable with them. They need to do that for themselves on their own first,
100%.
Yeah.
I think another important piece too is for me, when I'm seeing someone, especially with a big name, and there's a lot of illusion around it, it will feel. So by the way, a really good indicator for me is what I feel in my body. If there's illusion there, it will feel like it's only skin deep. There's not a lot of depth underneath it. It's almost like they're showing you this big facade, but if you were to move through the facade, there's almost like there's just no depth. Nothing deeper underneath that. There's nothing grounded underneath that illusion. And that can kind of help show you, okay, do I really want to be listening to this person's message, or are they just saying the words and they don't embody it? They don't believe it. There's no grounded perspective on what they have to say.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like some of my clients and in the community, there's a challenge to really feel that in the body, and that is a sign that I would say it's time to do some clearing because you're being blocked and there's probably some black magic there. I feel like Bashar is also a really good example of, someone who, not who I was thinking of originally, but just someone who is saying a lot of things, but it's just missing something. I mean, he's a gray. I don't know if people know that, but he's an Essassani gray. So why are we listening to the grays? Why are we doing that? So yeah, I think it's like he's saying all the right things and saying things that, for some it's helping people and they're needing that information and overlooking certain signs, So yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to rip the Band-Aid off on this one, guys, but another good example is Gabby Bernstein. Like there's no depth underneath any of that. It's just fluff. A lot of it is just fluff.
She's been infiltrated.
Yeah.
She's not in control of her vessel.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's being used. So.
Ooh, and I just got the chills move through me. So
yeah.
Now, another question that I have for you, and I know that there are probably a lot of answers on this, and you could probably teach a whole training on this, so I'm aware of that. But if you could give us a few tips or ideas for a client or a listener who is getting into the meditative space, they're connecting with their guides, but they feel a lot of interference, or they feel that reptilian influence, or they feel a presence of something. I'm speaking more for someone who's maybe a little bit more advanced in their journey, that they know how to connect with their guides, but they're like, oh my gosh, I feel like the example you gave earlier of you were feeling the reptilians with you in the room. Do you have any guidance on how we can push that stuff out of our field and protect ourselves, or how we can work with letting go of the interference?
Yeah. And for this, I really feel working with someone is going to be the best thing for you. Obviously, there are moments where we know we need to do this on our own and need to navigate it on our own. But having someone who you can, who knows how to, manage these beings and will be able to help you see the blind spots, because there are a lot of blind spots. And just having that extra support is going to be really helpful. Like, I don't recommend trying to do this solely on your own. And so, yeah, I have, my podcast as well, which talks a lot about the underworld beings, the above world beings, the shadow. And I do share information on how to navigate this. That I hope, for my community as well, is they can listen to that, okay, digest it, and then apply it to, their work, because it's really hard. It's like, okay, we're connected and we see each other and we know we're genuine, but there are a lot of others who are talking about the dark forces and not being so truthful. And I think one example is Debbie Solaris, because she talks about, she's like, the reptilians need our love and they're good. And, I'm just like, you can say that, but you also have to acknowledge like the other things that they have done. So I feel like people are kind of being misled often by the information out there. And so one of the things that I do and that I teach, and I actually have a course, it's an online course at your own pace that will be here probably in about a month. So end of December, for when we're recording this, of how to properly build out a container, how to build out a shield, how to make sure that your team of light is who they say they are, and there are no imposters or kind of false guides. And then there will be a section on protection practices and things that you can be doing and implementing in your day to day. Because when you're doing this work, I just always think it's so important to open a container and be in this space where you don't have all these outside energies coming in, and you call in your higher self, your teams of support, all of these galactic technologies, these light technologies, like the example, like the violet flame and the diamond light. And now you're in this contained space with this very potent, powerful energy. And you're able, really, where you start is just clearing whatever layers are coming up. And the end goal is to understand, these dark forces and these attachments, but it is a process. So you get comfortable with opening your space and kind of working with the light to identify, and sometimes it's just feeling. You don't need to see things. You don't need to be that advanced. You'll feel, you'll feel the energy move and the sensations and tingles. And you just start there and you keep going deeper and going deeper. And then that support and that safe space will help you to eventually get to where you need to go with the dark forces.
Yes, I think that's so important. And what comes through for me as we're speaking is, if you're practicing on your own, connecting with your guides, connecting through meditation, it is a good idea. I'm not going to say it might be. It is a good idea to set a container for yourself before you begin the practice, to really make sure that you're grounded and that you are surrounded with a protective shield, whatever way you want to do that. But just to open the container, I think is helpful to keep that in mind, because then you can really visualize yourself in even a hidden space or even a really protective space where there can be no interference or influence. I think setting the stage is more helpful than trying to push this stuff out when you're already in the space, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like you're in the container, you just set the intention of, anything that is inorganic, disharmonious, harmful, like just asking your team to help you see, what these blocks are. And, you just observe and listen, and you just get the hang of it eventually, and you're like, okay, now I'm understanding what's within me and how my body is purging this energy. And you kind of start to get into this flow. And instead of being like, I'm going to get right into the, recoding of the reptilian DNA, you start where you're meant to start and allow the process to unfold from there.
Yeah. And if you need to ask something to leave, ask it to leave. I mean, for me last night, I live in a very old apartment, so I do get visitations from spirits and all sorts of things here. So last night before I went to bed, I stood at the foot of my stairs. I live in an apartment building where there's a stairwell that goes down to my front door. Stood at the top of my stairs and I said, anything that's here that's not allowed to be here, you must leave. And then I saw all of these energies walking down my stair, out the door. And then when they were gone, we locked the door. They're gone, right?
Wow.
So that can be a nice way to just set the intention. Anything that's not here, you must leave now, and visualizing that you're locking the door on them too.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot to deal with. Yeah. I'm glad that they stay away from me. Like we're not even going to try, but I don't live in that old of an apartment. But I have had my fair share of ghosts, especially living in Charleston, South Carolina. That was insane. So maybe I paid my dues. I don't know.
Oh, definitely. Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. What was I going to ask you next? I had a specific question. Oh, yes. I know that you're an expert in psychic surgery. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what that modality is all about?
Yeah, that's just I feel like the most common term to describe what it is we're doing. So I just kind of, took it and went with it. But basically in those sessions, like in a quantum healing, we're addressing more of the trauma, the emotion, the ancestral pain, the inner child, limiting beliefs, things like that, which are, go hand in hand. But with the psychic surgery, it's more of a focus on anything disharmonious, inorganic, artificial. So we're looking for entity attachments, for artificial intelligence, for anyone who's experiencing a psychic attack in any shape, size, or form. It happens in different ways for everyone. Or like me with having these, what I call them, my reptilian roommates. And it's like, okay, we want to try to figure out what within is allowing them to be here and purge that energy out. So those sessions are more for, dark force work, but we also do soul retrieval and we do a lot of coding in there as well. It kind of just depends on what is needed. But I think one of my strong suits is my ability to move a lot of energy in a short amount of time. So I'm not looking for like little implants or things like that. I'm looking for massive structures and machines. And sometimes it's like waterfalls of dark black energy. And like a lot of times I'll see, it almost looks like a volcano is erupting with that black tar. Like we are just really moving as much dark energy as we can. And sometimes it gets more specific, sometimes, a little bit more general. But yeah, that's basically what happens there.
Wow, that's so powerful. And I know you also work with galactic astrology, which is pretty cool. So does that help connect people with their galactic origins?
Yeah. So your birth chart obviously gives you the blueprint for this lifetime, but there have been a few people who have been looking at patterns with fixed stars and the zodiac and the houses, and then using QHHT to almost like confirm and solidify. So certain fixed stars can show a connection, let's say, to the Pleiades. And then in the QHHT session, those Pleiadian lifetimes come up. And so she did this research, my teacher, for 10 years before creating the software and creating this course. So when I did this healing in Mount Shasta for my womb, not realizing I was going right back home to the woman who was causing the womb issues. But she told me about galactic astrology because she was like, oh, I was a Lyran commander. And I'm like, how do you know that? She just spewed out a bunch of things. I'm like, how did you get that information? She's like, oh, galactic astrology. I went home, I looked it up, and I signed up immediately. So it shows basically your journey from the moment you enter the Milky Way. It can also show what galaxy you've come from before. And then all of your most ancient lifetimes, kind of the journey you've taken, and then your most recent lifetimes, and sometimes even future lifetimes. So the way I do the reports, or I do reports, I think a lot of other astrologers just do a Zoom call. My reports are like 20 plus pages. They take me 4 to 5 hours, and I am pulling through, just so much information. And it's a really beautiful, like I love doing them because it's like you see the evolution and the progression and all of these different things that they've experienced and done that led to this moment now. And so it's this really beautiful journey that comes through. And I feel really honored to be able to access that information. So.
Hello. The little doggy visit.
Yeah.
I love that so much because not only are you helping your clients deal with the malevolent stuff and the attachments and the shadow work, but you're also helping remind them of home and who they really are and connecting them with their galactic ancestry too. I think both sides of the work are so important and so critical. Yes, love this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, a nice balance of light and dark. And, with the Akashic as well, as it's, helping to, just put more pieces together, but coming in from such a beautiful and loving space. So, Yeah.
Lauren, do you have any messages or thoughts for us on what we're going through right now as a collective? Just anything that you've been experiencing or receiving in your work lately that you feel like would be helpful for people to know?
Yeah, it's been intense, um, to say the least.
Mhm.
And so I just feel like things are going to continue to snowball. And for if we're watching the world stage, which I am, and I know for some healers and light workers, that's just not what they want to be doing, and they want to be detached from that, and that's okay. We all need to listen, not to our ego and not to our fears, but to our intuition and higher self, because we're all meant to be, stationed at these different points on the globe and tuned into different things, because if we're all tuned into the same thing, we're going to be missing things and there's going to be blind spots. So, I've been on TikTok a lot because there are others who, I just don't have the time in the day to make these videos, but I would if I could. So I'm just really grateful for, and I think because I've been so caught up in the distorted spiritual world, and now I'm like, okay, there are people out there that are like these freedom seekers and truth seekers, and they're taking the time to do these research and make these videos. And so I would honestly, if you want to stay connected to what is going on the world stage, in the way that feels right for you, maybe a couple videos here and there. You don't have to, really dive into the rabbit hole unless you want to. But I think paying attention to what's being uncovered and what's coming up, not attached to it, just paying attention to it is really important. Because we're all helping to purge this collective energy, especially for those who are not yet awake. And so for us to be even just like, slightly tuned in to what's going on in the collective, I think could be really beneficial. And just, I had this happen after the election. I was pretty vocal about everything, but I'm like, I need to unplug and I need to disconnect and just come back to myself. So I feel like we'll all probably move through waves and phases of that, and just, listening and honoring when you need the space and when it's time to tune in and when it's time to vocalize, and just taking care of your own inner world is going to be the best thing that you can do, as well as, your community and, your pods. And just really making sure that we're staying connected with each other during this time.
So important. Thank you so much for all of that. I think it's what we needed to hear today. So I appreciate that so much. And we would love to know, what do you have going on in your business right now? What's popping for you? What do you have to share?
Yeah. So I have, the podcast, which is, every other week, it's a new topic. The one that's coming out probably right before this is a deep dive on Elon Musk. So that will be really fun. And the week before that was a deep dive on artificial intelligence. And so, yeah, for anyone who, wants to understand these energies a little bit better. And then, I have that course coming out. So that will be end of December, for just learning how to set up your space, and like the beginning stages of the shadow work. And I'm doing 2025 theme readings. So just a little, 2-page report from the Akashic, of no predictions or anything like that, because I find that I don't really like to work in that way, as I'm sure you understand that, but more so just general themes that are, gonna come up. So when you're moving through your year, instead of like, why is this happening to me and blah, 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 it's like you kind of have this peace of mind of knowing there's going to be a theme around, just example, like heart healing, or, a shift in business and blah, blah, blah. And so you're just a little bit more, um, feeling confident. So those are fun. I wasn't going to do them, and I had a couple people ask. So I'm like, okay, these are helping people. So let's do it. So and then, just, sessions, and I'm heading back to Tulum. So, not business related, but personally really excited for that. So that'll be my winter.
Amazing. Oh, I might
Yeah.
have to buy myself one of those. That sounds fun. Love that
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
So cool.
They're nice. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. And of course, we have to end the conversation today by hearing from you, Lauren. What does it mean to be a mystic?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel for me, it's simply just having this strong internal and external relationship to God and all of creation, and experiencing that abundant life force energy in the human experience. So, being connected not only to our bodies, but our world, the elements, the earth humans and everything that exists here, and as well as the cosmos and the stars, and, just being connected to the natural rhythms of the earth, which isn't always easy because there's been, with the Gregorian calendar and all these changes with that, it's not easy. So yeah, it's just that connection to all that is and expressing it through you.
Oh, totally. I mean, just a quick side note here with the time change. I mean, the fact that we change the clocks twice a year, what a way to throw you off the natural rhythms of the earth. Holy cow. No, thank you. I am so over that.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't, I mean, we know why they do it now.
Yeah.
I remember, a few years ago, it's like, I don't get it. Why do they do this? I'm like, oh, they're just exactly trying to throw us off. So
100%.
yeah.
And any final tips for you for living a more mystical life?
Yeah, I feel, and this is something that really helped me, is just kind of making your whole life a ritual and a ceremony, like in everything you do, including, waking up in the morning and making your food. And just really, because I have clients too that want to strengthen and develop the intuition, and they're kind of like looking outside of themselves. And the message that always comes is like, develop and strengthen those intuitive abilities through the physical world, like through your communication with the physical world. And that is really, really going to help to open you up to receive messages, in different ways. So just, yeah, kind of shifting the way you're perceiving reality and finding the magic in every moment and every day.
Beautiful message for us to end on. We love that. We love that here. Thank you so much, Lauren, for coming on the show today. Appreciate you so much and for you sharing so much truth.
Thank you for having me.